don't see that. Hey, everybody. Sam Amico, Hoops Wire Live, 330 to go. We've got a Cavaliers game to talk about. One, at least, real game. And I think that most Cavs fans are going to be pretty happy with the results of that first game. Going on the road to Toronto, just blowing them out. Kind of seemed like they had maybe the Cavs a little bit of jitters there in that first quarter. Close game, and then all of a sudden, what did we call it last season? A Cavalanche. But this is a new day, obviously, under JB Bickerstaff, and I thought there was a lot of promising things. I'm sorry, Kenny Atkinson. I got JB Bickerstaff on the mind because the Pistons are in town tonight after the show. So Kenny Atkinson, new day, and I think there was a lot of things that we saw that we liked. If you're a fan of the Cavaliers, number one, the ball was really moving, especially even in the first quarter. The Cavs were moving the ball, just couldn't make a shot. And then I thought that was a big difference. Obviously, Evan Mobley, we've heard about that all training camp and preseason. The goal is to get Evan Mobley the basketball more, have him take more shots, and be more efficient. Well, how does 9 of 14 from the field sound in game one? And really looking so much more comfortable with the basketball than we've seen Evan Mobley look in a long time. And I think that was a success. Moving the basketball was a success. We did not see the ball stick very often. A couple times, old habits are hard to break. A couple times the ball would stick. And to me, a huge thing that really has gone unsaid for the Cavs, but this is just a truth in the NBA. If you want to be a contending team, the bench, the reserves played so well. Karis LeVert made his first 8 shots. He missed his final shot, and it rolled in and out. So, Karis LeVert came off the bench. That's exactly what you're looking for. He was extremely efficient. Ty Jerome, who I said last week would be a major X factor on this team, came in and scored 14 points. Yeah, I know a lot of people have said, Darius Garland had 7 points, didn't do a whole lot, which is not really true. He just didn't score a whole lot. And the bottom line is you're not going to have, everybody scoring 15 to 20 points every game. Jared Allen was the same. Looked like Jared Allen. Darius Garland and Ty Jerome and even Karis LeVert, to me, looked great when it came to getting into the lane and creating for their teammates. And really, that's kind of what the point guard or the primary ball handler is expected to do. So, game one, to really a smashing success. And look, we're going to be doing this all the way to April, right? At least if things go well, you're obviously going to be doing it into May with the playoffs. If things go really well, you're doing it into June. But we won't get too far ahead of ourselves because we're still in October and it's only game 2 and the Raptors stink. There is that factor. The Raptors are terrible. And they were missing a couple of players. They're missing RJ Barrett, Bruce Brown, and Kelly Olynyk. So whatever. The bottom line is if the Cavs continue to play like that, they'll be able to compete with the teams that are expected to be among the East Elite, which, of course, is Boston, who looks great. Blew out the Knicks, the new-look Knicks. Blew out the Washington Wizards last night in D.C. And by the way, Washington Wizards. Did people even realize they're still a franchise? Whenever you think things are going bad with the Cavs, think about the Washington Wizards. Or if you want to stay closer to home, you can think about the Cleveland Browns. But I would advise against it. But how about this? The Washington Wizards have not won 50 games in a season in 45 years. You would think you could back into a 50-game win season by accident. They haven't done it. I mentioned that to Cavs legend Mark Price, and you know what his response was? Yeah, well, they're not going to do it again this year either. So I don't want to get too far off on the Wizards, and I don't want to jinx the Cavs because guess who the Cavs play Saturday night? Washington Wizards in Washington. So if they lose, you can blame me, which most people do anyway. When the Cavs lose, I told Kobe Altman, obviously the head of basketball operations, I told him I don't think he takes as much grief as I do when the Cavs lose. And he said, well, good, you're to blame. So anyway, before I go too far off the rails, which I probably have done already, the Cavs have clearly established an identity already. You know, with a new coaching staff, that's usually kind of difficult. But here's the benefit of bringing everybody back. I mean, the first 11 guys are back. But to me, I look at this team almost as if it's a new team. And it's a new day. And the way their approach has been at practice and training camp and shoot around, and obviously we saw in the first game, but also in the preseason games, they just look so much more comfortable, happy. I mentioned this last week when I went in the locker room. I came face to face with Darius Garland, and he started doing a little dance. And I thought, am I supposed to dance now too, or would that be awkward? And I can tell you, anyone who has seen me attempt to dance, which was also probably 45 years ago, it is awkward, so I don't do it. But I will say this: the Cavs have just looked comfortable, fluid, happy. Darius Garland said, the joy has returned for me. Now, all of that said, and I wrote this in my pregame dribbles this morning, praising Kenny Atkinson and praising kind of these new vibes, it's going to come across as a shot at JB Bickerstaff, and that's never the intent. And JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons, if you're watching us live or close to live before Friday night's game, are in town. JB Bickerstaff, I'm going to go see him in the opposing locker room, and that's going to be odd. You know, I mean, it was just 3 months ago or 4 months ago that we were covering him in the home locker room. So to see him in the other locker room is going to be strange. I don't think just for us, probably way more strange for JB Bickerstaff. I also wonder if it'll be awkward for Kobe Altman, who fired JB Bickerstaff. You know, you think about that. It's like, oh, here's the guy back in our building that we said you're not good enough to coach us anymore. But I will say this, JB Bickerstaff, and I've said this before. I've been doing this, 16, 17 years, maybe closer to 20. I don't know, full time. It's been a long time. When I started, of course, I was doing my stories on chisel and granite. That's how long ago it's been. But there's not been anybody in the NBA to me who's cooler and more personable and more polite and just there's some who are as great, but JB Bickerstaff's kind of like the standard in terms of people I've covered just being a great person. And I think that he's going to do a really good job there in Detroit. The Pistons had an 8-point lead at home against the Pacers, I believe in the fourth quarter, and blew that lead. So JB and lost a game. So JB's going to have his work cut out for him there in Detroit, but I think he's going to do a great job because guess what? In Cleveland, he showed that he can take a team that really isn't supposed to do much and get them to another level. Look, the Cavs last year won their first playoff series without LeBron James on the team since 1993. So That's pretty impressive. And JB Bickerstaff, will probably go down in Cavs lore for that. And the fact that he lasted 5.5 years in today's NBA, that's rare. If your name's not Eric Spoelstra or Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr, it's hard to stay at the job more than 5 or 6 years. And I think that JB Bickerstaff warranted that. That said, I go back to something Larry Bird once said. And he said, after 3 years as a player, I knew I usually wanted a new coach and a new voice. And interestingly, Larry Bird, coach of Pacers, was the NBA Coach of the Year. And one of I think only 2 or 3 people, by the way, Larry Bird, who's ever won NBA MVP award in a year. And I think he won 3. But he also won NBA Coach of the Year and NBA Executive of the Year. That's almost unheard of. So Larry Bird said, every 3 years, I kind of need a fresh voice. So that's kind of where the Cavs, I think, were coming from. The players were coming from. And now that they have that fresh voice in Kenny Atkinson, there seems to be more energy in the building. And I don't think it was just, I don't think it was a dislike of JB Bickerstaff. I just think they wanted somebody new. And the Cavs knew, the front office knew, we're bringing probably everybody back or most everybody back. So what do we need to change in terms of the players? What do we need to change? We need to get better offensively. Cavs were top 10 defensively last season, top 5. They're probably going to be 1 or 2 this year with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Karl Anthony Towns no longer in Minnesota, now in New York. But in Minnesota, he was next to Rudy Gobert. Really, your defense is determined by how you're protecting the basket and the paint for the most part. You also got to defend the three-point line. But for the most part, if you can defend the basket and the paint really well, you're going to have a pretty good defense. And the Cavs have 2 of the best rim protectors in the game, in Mobley and Allen. And they may have the best defensive front court in the game, at least near the basket. So that said, they were in the bottom 10 offensively. So that's why the front office said, we need something to change here. We're not maximizing these guys offensively. So that's why you bring in a Kenny Atkinson, who had spent a few years at Golden State, and so far so great, right? I mean, obviously just 1 game, but I'm talking about the preseason and training camp. Things have just been more energetic. The offense has been more fluid. And Evan Mobley's become a focal point. Not the only reason Kenny Atkinson got the job, but a big reason is the interview. How are you going to get Evan Mobley to that all-star level? How do we do that? What's your plan? And Kenny Atkinson's plan in the interview process probably, I'm sure, went better on that topic than anybody else's. Or the Cavs just believed it more. And guess what? He did more than just sell it. We're seeing what the plan is. All preseason and the first game, the first shot went to Evan Mobley. Somebody asked me, well, if Evan Mobley's shooting more often, who's going to take less shots? That man's Donovan Mitchell. That's who it's got to be. And Donovan Mitchell has come out and said, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for taking less shots, lightening my workload so Evan can get more. And not just Evan. These other guys, too, are going to get more opportunities in this offense. Nobody has to give up shots. You hate that as a player. I know when I play old man basketball, I will, and since I'm probably NBA level, I can relate as a talent. But I know my thinking is, well, it's been 4 or 5 possessions since I've taken a shot. I don't care what happens now. The ball's going up. It's my turn to shoot. I can tell you Larry Hughes of the Cleveland Cavaliers back in, the earlier 2000s. I used to think Larry Hughes he just thinks it's his turn to shoot. And you know what? I didn't blame him. We never get out of that, I think as kids when you think, oh, it's my turn to talk or it's my turn to play or it's my turn to do whatever. We do that as adults. I don't know if you do. I'm not judging. I'm just passing along that I certainly do. It's my turn not to pay for dinner or coffee, which, I'm still waiting for that day. But, so I think that everybody's still going to get the emphasis of this offense is if the ball moves better, everybody's going to get more opportunities to shoot the basketball. And that's what we love to do in basketball, right? Defense, we have to do. Some guys love defending. They're historically throughout the NBA, there are guys who just want to go out there and shut the opposing leading scorer down. And if not, shut him down, make his life really difficult, frustrating. Some guys thrive on that, and that's their enjoyment of the game. But by and large, most people want to score points because that's who everybody talks about, right? Or if you don't score enough, we talk about that too. You know how many times I've heard, well, Darius Garland only had 7 points in that opener. Like, well, for one, they were winning by 30 points. They took him out. He got into foul trouble, and he didn't shoot that much. He was creating for others. He also had 6 assists. But it just goes back to my point, which is NBA players want to score just as much as the rest of us. So this is an equal opportunity offense. Donovan Mitchell's still probably going to lead the team in scoring, but Evan Mobley may be second. So, you know what? Who cares if you're winning games? I think that that's the player's mindset. And I think that they've shown that. Everybody asks me, is this sustainable? I'm like, I don't know. Like I said, we're going to be doing it all the way till May. There's so many factors. You have to be good, and you do have to be a little bit lucky. I say that as a driver when I'm driving my vehicle. I'm good. I'm a good driver, but I've also got to be a little bit lucky. I shouldn't have said that because I actually came to the 330 to go studios today. Now I have to drive home. Now I'm going to be paranoid the whole way home. At least everyone else will be on the road. So JB Bickerstaff. Yeah. Look, I talked about how great of a guy he is to deal with. His dad, Bernie Bickerstaff, a former NBA head coach, came to all the games when JB was a coach. Just a wonderful guy. I used to want to sit next to Bernie Bickerstaff, JB's father, in the stands. Just wanted to sit there with him for a whole game and not even talk about basketball. Just sit there because he's so nice and personable. It made you feel good inside. That's the kind of family that the Bickerstaffs are. So I hope and I would expect that JB would get a nice reception for the Cavs game. And I think he's going to do great in Detroit and get them to the next level. And I'm not predicting this, but I could see JB taking 4 or 5 years to get Detroit Pistons to relevancy, maybe even contention. Who knows, in 5 years, and then them replacing him. That's just his luck. It happened, in Houston when he was an interim coach, happened in Cleveland. Who knows? Hopefully, if he wants to keep doing it, he has a career like Greg Popovich or Eric Spoelstra. I think every coach wants that, where you're with the same team for 15, 20 years. In Popovich's case, I guess it's almost 20. I think this is years 26 or 27 as the head coach of the Spurs. So, but I think JB's the guy who could get them to another level, and the Cavs are going to have to be careful. If there's anybody who's going to want to win the game for their coach tonight, it's the Detroit Pistons. And I certainly don't want to hear about it if the Cavs should lose at home to the Pistons. I know tomorrow. And then they've got to, right after the game, they hop on the plane and they go play the Washington Wizards. So you're talking about opening the season with 3 teams who shouldn't make the playoffs. Then Monday you go to the Knicks, which, any visit to New York is going to be tough. And then, of course, Wednesday, already by the end of October, JB Bickerstaff will have come to town. And Wednesday, the night before Halloween, the lone visit of the season. And it's not even nationally televised this year. People are over LeBron James and the Lakers playing the Cavs. Not nationally TV. I looked at the national TV game that night's like the Suns or somebody, maybe the Celtics. I'm not sure, but it's not going to be the Lakers versus the Cavs. You can only get that on local television. That's assuming you can access it, which we've talked about before on this show, and I won't get into. But yeah, that home game in Cleveland is on national TV. Interestingly, the Cavs play the Lakers in Los Angeles for their lone visit there the night before LeBron's 40th birthday. So that, I believe that's December 29th would be the game, or 30th. Yeah, somewhere in there. So anyway, and sorry, LeBron, for not knowing your exact birthday. I still have to text some people. I know like 6 people whose birthday is today, and I've said nothing. And I know when it's my birthday and I wake up and there aren't like 30 texts, I'm like, what is going on? Are these people trapped under something heavy? Why have they not texted yet? But I digress. So I think we like what we've seen from the Cavs. I think that this is going to be very interesting, facing JB Bickerstaff already. They played, now the Cavs did go to Detroit last week for the preseason game and saw JB there, and there were handshakes and hugs before the game. This is a little bit different. This one counts for real. It's in Cleveland. JB was in the home locker room and in the home press conference, you know, like I said, I guess 4 or 5 months ago, feels like yesterday. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic as far as that goes. But, you know, I think if the Cavs continue to play like they played in that opener, then we're going to be excited to watch them play. I ran a story on the website yesterday going into the season. Who was it? Was it Hoops Hype? A website called Hoops Hype, which is very popular. Not, of course, as popular as Hoops Wire, but Hoops Hype ran a list of, going into the season, the most exciting teams to watch. And they just ranked them according to their excitement of watching. And the Cavs were ranked 18th in a 30-team league. Now, Hoops Hype, the writer, did say perhaps Kenny Atkinson can make that more enjoyable. That's, you know, and I guarantee you he will. If it's based on those last 3 quarters of the Toronto game, yeah, absolutely. Now, most fans don't care. They only care if their team wins, which I'd be right there with them. And I think that the Cavs should do plenty of that as well, if they're playing the right way. If they stay the same defensively as they did last year and don't go back, you know, don't take a step back defensively, and their offense improves, yeah, they can run with the big boys. And by that, I mean, you know, the Celtics look like a beast already. And, you know, the Knicks, the Sixers, I have my real doubts about the Sixers being able to stay healthy. And they're just, Paul George and Joel Embiid are injury prone. And they're dealing with injuries of the past so much that they've got to hold them out for a week, which the NBA, by the way, is investigating the Joel Embiid plan to not play in back-to-back games. I don't think the NBA is going to go for that. Especially the Sixers came out and said it. Daryl Morey, the Sixers president, who I love and is a Medina Highland graduate, and he's still back in Medina from time to time. Great guy. But he came out and said, yeah, our plan is to probably not play Joel Embiid in back-to-back games, so he's healthy for when it matters. The NBA is like, this is a business, man. You play your stars as much as they can go, you know. So I think that will be interesting to see the results of that. And I don't know how many people don't, you know, realize Daryl Morey, from the president of the Philadelphia 76ers, is from the 330 to go. Obviously used to be the president of Houston Rockets when James Harden was there. They were very tight. And then they had a split and resulted in Harden getting traded. I think he's probably the only front office member, at least running an NBA team from this area code. Although Michael Winger, the new president of the Washington Wizards, became the president GM. Just call him the GM of the Washington Wizards is Cleveland, and I think it might be Benedictine graduate. And then he actually worked for the Cavs for a little bit in their front office. But yeah, so there you go. There's the Northeast Ohio front office guys. I might be missing somebody in there. Forgive me if I do. I also know we have two really prominent agents from Northeast Ohio, both from 216, but we'll forgive them anyway. Rich Paul, of course, being LeBron James' agent and the agent of multiple other stars, and Aaron Turner, who is from Orange, Ohio. Gosh, who's he represent? JT Thor, who's on a 10-day contract with the Cavs. He represents a lot of other guys too. And Aaron went to Orange. So anyway, your favorite sports writer is from the 330 to go. And grew up in the Woodridge School District, in fact. So I hope that you all knew that about Brian Windhorst. When I say your favorite sports writer. So yeah. I did too, in case you guys, ever want to read my stuff. I'm from here as well. So anyway, the Cavs, exciting stuff. I hope they don't blow it against the Pistons, and then you watch this after the game and you're like, what is Amico talking about? Of course, they could beat the Pistons. You probably would say that too. What's Amico talking about? And then the Wizards on Saturday night, the Knicks, and then the Lakers, and then Friday night, a week from today, guess who comes to town? And don't ask me because I have not memorized the Cavs schedule beyond this. But next Friday, a rematch with the Orlando Magic in Cleveland. The Magic opened the season by going into Miami and blowing the Heat out. So they're, as I always say, this Eastern Conference, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Milwaukee could get their act together. Obviously, the Cavs are in there. Indiana Pacers went to Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not going to count out the Miami Heat. We're 6. I'm missing somebody. Orlando Magic. This conference goes 7-8 deep, and we don't know. That's why every game counts. Every regular season game counts. And that's why the Cavs got to be sharp, every night. You don't get that Tuesday night in February where it's like, we're playing the Portland Trail Blazers. It's snowstorm. Nobody came to the game except for that Amico idiot, which they say every game. But, just don't have the energy tonight. Then you lose that game. Well, come April 14th, the last day of the regular season, you might look at the standings and say, gosh, we finished 5th in the Eastern Conference because we're a game behind the Orlando Magic. Had we won that Portland Trailblazers game that we should have won at home, which I'm using the Portland Trailblazers because the Cavs lost to them at home last year and they were terrible, Portland. And but it's going to come back to haunt you, come back to bite you. So in my opinion, for the first time since I've been covering the NBA that I can remember, every regular season game counts. We're not all paying attention to the NBA right now, obviously. Got the NFL going on. Guardians just finished a great run. Browns are in the news every other day for all the wrong reasons. I shouldn't even say every other day. It's like every other hour for all the wrong reasons. People are focused on that. Why can't our football franchise get it right? Trust me, I've been asking that since the 60s, man. Not really that long, but it feels like that long. But the Cavs, I think, this is the start of something good, really good, something exciting. And I'll be real interested to see how it goes. And if the wheels, when it gets bad, when they go through that slump, how do they come out on the other side? Kenny Atkinson's been talking about that a lot. So it's a long year. It's an absolute marathon. You got to play the long game. You really do. You got to be at your best when it means the most. So on one hand, if you do finish 6th in the Eastern Conference or 3rd, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to be that big of a difference because if you're going to win and get to the finals in the playoffs, you got to win road games anyway. Even if you have the number 3 seed, got to win on the road in the playoffs. So, with all that in mind, I'm getting way ahead of myself. There's a whole slew of 81 games to go. And, we'll be covering it here on HoopsWire Live and hoopswire.com. And also, my mother told me not to drag out the endings of the show because she'll tune out when I start going too long. So you can always count on your mom for honesty, The other thing is I think you should grow your hair longer, which it's like, do you know how old I am? It's not like I can walk around like a young John Bon Jovi. I guess I could. Maybe next show we'll have that. I'll have a wig on because it's getting close to Halloween. No, next show will be after Halloween. Yeah, who cares? We can celebrate it anyway. All right. Well, with all that in mind, thank you so much for joining. Keep an eye on the Cavs. Always email me, samamico@gmail.com, or just comments under the show here on Facebook on 330 to go or on YouTube. I always check them out, try to respond. So until next week, we will, I hope you have a great week and we'll talk to you then.